So, we've been asked to make a quick review of this Kickstarter called Civicus. So, we printed some components and we tried to play the game, and we shall see how it went. First of all, we could show you some of the components, and I must remind you that this is the print and play version, so we've added some markers of our own. This, for instance, is the gems from the treasure chest from Stonemaier Games, and this is some leftover pieces from Agricola once I replaced those tokens, and these are some spare dice I had home. We've also put these components on some cardboard just so we had something to use when we played. We have no idea how the finished product will look like, but this is obviously just a prototype, just so you are aware. One of the players is supposed to have yellow pieces, and one of the players is supposed to have red pieces, but I couldn't find any red pieces, so this is brown pieces. Anyway, here is the scoreboard. Here is the game board with hex tiles, and the players try to dominate these different tiles, and they do so by building settlements. There are 3 types of things you can build. We start with building camps, which borders 2 of these hexes. So now I have the influence over those 2 hexes. Later on you can upgrade the camp to a village. And when you do that, you move the village to a corner, just like a settlement in Settlers of Catan, where this borders 3 different hexes that I influence. And if you're really lucky, you could upgrade this to a city. And each of these are stronger than the previous ones. So if I have a camp and my opponent have a camp, this is contested. This is in conflict. So no one of us will get the benefit from this one. However, if I upgrade to a village, I have a greater influence than my opponent there, and I will get the benefit, in this case a yellow die. The game is placed over 6 rounds, and there are several ways to gain points. One of the things we missed when we tried to play this the first time was that you actually score each and every round, so we were just doing an end scoring, so that wasn't so good. First of all, there are settlements on the board. The settlements, they are the villages and the cities. Each turn you multiply the value from your settlements, which is 1 point for these and 3 points for these, and you multiply that with the number of farms. There are several of these farm tokens here. Then you have markets. The yellow ones here are markets, and you multiply the number of markets you control with the exotic goods you manage to accumulate, and how you do that, more on that later. We also have temples, and you take the number of temples you control. Right now I don't control any temple, but there I control 1 temple, and you multiply that by the number of sacred grounds that you control. So if you control 2 temples and 2 sacred grounds, that would be 4 points in all. Also, you have a technology track here, and you can spend resources on upgrading your technology track, and it's fairly nice because since you accumulate more and more points each round, the earlier you can get up that track, the more money, the more points will simply accumulate over the course of the game. Now the main game engine is the dice, and each turn you get a number of dice that you can roll, and you get different types of resources for these different dice. So for the green dice, the forest dice, you mainly get wood, some clay, and then the special wild one. For the whatever that is, mountain die, you get rock and also some kind of metal. And the yellow die is a little of everything. Also 2 wild cards, so it's fairly nice. So when it's my turn, I start, and since this is the very first round, I start by simply placing a camp somewhere. And in this phase I can either place a camp, move a camp, or pull a camp. Perhaps I need the resources. I only have 6 of these, so when I use them up I cannot place any more camps, or I cannot upgrade to cities or whatever. Then I get a number of dice. In this case I control that area and that area, so I get a yellow and a green die. And then I place them under the corresponding, so I get a clay and I get the metal. And then I can look at my little card and I can see what can I do with this. And the truth is I cannot do much at all with this, because in order to build a new camp I would need 2 wood. I don't have any wood. In order to upgrade to a village I would need 2 stone, which I don't have, and a city needs 4 resources. So I basically can't do anything. But I can sacrifice my resources to upgrade my technology track. So that is what I will do. I will put it there. Which means I will get 2 points now and every subsequent round for the remainder of the game. And this was my first turn. So I'm done. And now it is my opponent's turn. So my opponent could perhaps place here and get a black and a green, and would get a clay and an ore. And it's the same here. He or she could not do any reasonable action with these 2 resources, so they upgrade the technology level. Now we should also keep scores, because this was the first round. It's 6 rounds. Now we changed the first player every round, so now the next round it is the same player again who starts. So the first action, to be able to place a camp, and I have the feeling that it is vital in the beginning to maximize the number of dice, so I would place there, which means we get 2 black die, 1 green and 1 yellow die, and we shall see. We got and since we have more dice, we now can actually make some good stuff here. So look at this, we have 2 stone, and for 2 stone I can upgrade to a village. So where do I want to put my village? I think I will put my village here. So I simply take my camp and I move it to the corner instead. And now this village controls these 3 hexes, which is nice. Now I used those 2, and I have 2 more dice that I cannot do something with apart from upgrading my technology, because to move from the first to the second I need to sacrifice any 2 resources. So that was the entire round, and the turn goes back to me. I place a camp, and regardless of where I put it, I can only get one more die out of this. Because if I put it there, I would still not get the yellow die, because this village have a greater influence over the hex than I have. So what do I want? I will place my die there, and I will get an additional green die. So I will have 2 green and 1 yellow die. That's a wild card, a wood, and a stone. Now, these wild cards, they give me a choice. I can either use them as any resource, and in this case, it means I could upgrade one of my camps to a village, or I could use it along with this wood and place another camp on the board, or I could take this wildcard and simply get a free exotic good, because when I look at the scoring card, I multiply the number of markets I control with the number of exotic goods I have. So if I want to grab many of these and try to control many of the markets, they could accumulate a number of points. However, in this case, I will use this as a wood, and these two I will use to place another camp. And I will place this camp here. That concludes the second round, and since we changed starting player, it's my turn again. So this would give me an additional yellow die. And so the game goes on and on until we've played all the 6 rounds. And that's basically the rules.
But it's quite fast-paced.
It's very fast-paced. It wasn't as hard to play the game as we first thought. The rulebook is slightly confusing to some bits, and it took some discussion for us to realize how they intended the game to be played. Also, I strongly would suggest that they change the font, the typeface for the actual rules, because it's hard to quickly read through it. It can be done, of course, but it's a nice typeface for headlines, but not for this descriptive text. Other than that, the game is quickly played. I think it has potential. We've only tried it one time before we made this demo, so it's hard to tell about the strategic levels and tactic levels of it, and I have a hard time saying how much of replayability there is, but I think it was very, very nice. It looks quite a lot like Settlers of Catan, of course, when you look at it, but the actual play is not really Settlers of Catan. It doesn't feel like Settlers of Catan. This feels like a game in its own right. And I think it's interesting to have different dice with different types of resources on it. And I think there are some really, really tricky decisions on when to go for resources, when to go for different die, and to weigh scoring points now versus trying to get more dice and scoring more points later. So I think it's clever design. I like it. So my hat is off, and I wish them best of luck with the Kickstarter campaign. A nice game, but once again, let me remind you that the final components will not look anything like this. And obviously, this is just printed from a PDF file, so the print and play version is not exactly high resolution. So the final product will obviously look much better than this, because it will be professionally printed. That's it.